King Charles didn't just open Parliament, he lit a fire under this country.
He reminded Canadians and the world that we're not a sidekick, we're not a state, and we're definitely not for sale.
He talked sovereignty, reconciliation, energy, innovation, and yeah, he said it. The true North is indeed strong and free.
It was bold. It was emotional. It was the kind of speech that made you want to high-five your barista and shout, "Never 51" out your window.
And let's just take a second here. Mark Carney inviting the king to open Parliament, that was no coincidence. That was strategy.
It sent a message. Canada is back, baby, and we're leading with intelligence, dignity, and a British accent that somehow doesn't sound condescending when it's royal.
We're about to break down why this speech mattered and how the world reacted and why Bono might be our new Minister of Feeling.
This video is about pride, it's about momentum, and why Canada just reminded everyone we're not here to follow, we're here to lead.
Let's start with the obvious. This wasn't just any speech. This was only the third time in Canadian history that a monarch has delivered the speech from the throne.
The first, 1957, a young Queen Elizabeth II opened Parliament during the Cold War, right when Canada was stepping into its role as a peacekeeping nation.
The second, 1977. It was her Silver Jubilee. Pierre Trudeau was in office, the Constitution was still British, and Canada was just starting to figure out who it really wanted to be.
And now, it's 2025. The world's on fire, economically, literally, politically. And Canada just reminded everyone, we still know who we are.
And unlike the last two times, this one didn't feel like a museum exhibit. This time, the speech didn't feel ceremonial, it felt personal, intentional, and timed perfectly.
Now, don't get us wrong. There was plenty of tradition and ceremony, and at first, it almost felt outdated, like, are we really doing the feather hat and black robes thing in 2025?
But honestly, it worked, because in a world spinning with chaos and change, maybe a little continuity and consistency is exactly what we needed.
Charles opened with a land acknowledgement on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe.
He spoke in French and English, he honored our Indigenous, British, and French roots, and he connected them to who we are now.
Not bad for his first time here as king, and he wasn't phoning it in. He said, "Every time I come to Canada, a little more of Canada seeps into my bloodstream, and from here, straight to my heart."
You can't fake that. That's affection and personal. And if you were watching it live, you felt it.
The guy quoted Dieppe, Juno Beach, Vimy Ridge. And that's not just a highlight reel, that's Canada's legacy.
And then came the line that basically broke Canadian Twitter. A confident Canada which has welcomed new Canadians, including from some of the most tragic global conflict zones, can seize this opportunity by recognizing that all Canadians can give themselves far more than any foreign power on any continent can ever take away.
That is not subtle. Translation, we're not for sale, not to America, not to anyone, so you can take your 51st state fantasies and go bother someone else.
What Charles did, intentionally or not, was remind us that Canada has something that the world needs, and it's not just commodities.
We've got values, reconciliation, multiculturalism, bilingualism, and a deep respect for democracy. And yeah, we've got some pretty decent manners too. And then just to seal it with a kiss from history, he referenced the anthem, "The true North is indeed strong and free." Straight from the throne, straight to the heart.
The crown didn't just come for a visit, it stood with us. It spoke in our languages, honored our past, and backed our future. It reminded us who we are and why the world is watching.
Let's be honest, Dave. Not everyone loves the monarchy, and we get it. The legacy is complicated, the history is messy, and hey, we're not even royalists.
No. The Bloc Québécois didn't even show up. They boycotted the entire speech, and I think that was a miss.
Look, we respect Quebec's identity, their language, their culture, their fight for self-determination. That's a real hard-earned legacy, and no one is taking that away.
But this moment wasn't about bending the knee to Britain. It was about Canada stepping into the spotlight and saying, we're here, together.
And when you're not in the room, you don't get to shape the story. You don't get to represent your people in a moment that will go down in history.
Meanwhile, Indigenous leaders were there. They didn't just attend, they stood in that room with purpose, knowing this was a moment about reconciliation, about belonging, and about being seen. And that we, as Canadians, needed to see them, stand with them, and move forward together.
That land acknowledgement at the start, that wasn't just symbolic. Canada's been doing them for years, but hearing it from the Crown in front of the world, that mattered. It showed that the monarchy is taking responsibility, not just for history, but for being part of the path forward.
And can we just take a moment to, honor Wab Kinew?
The Premier of Manitoba had a long conversation with the King, face to face, relaxed, even a little fun. It wasn't staged, it was real, and it showed exactly the kind of leader he is.
Grounded, visionary, the first Indigenous Premier of Manitoba, and someone who's redefining what political leadership can look like in this country.
Honestly, don't you all just want to move to Manitoba? Not just for the polar bears, but to have him as your Premier.
We love Wab, and we love seeing leadership that brings people in, not shuts them out. Unlike some other premiers in this country that rhyme with repel Sith, this whole visit, this speech, this moment, it was Carney's masterstroke. He brought the king at exactly the right time, not for ceremony, not for this nostalgia, but to remind Canadians and the world that leadership can be bold, inclusive, and smart as hell.
So while Canadians were feeling proud, guess who else noticed?
Literally everyone, but one person in particular summed it up best. Bono.
Yes, that Bono. He looked around and basically said, Canada, you're the adults in the room. The rock star, activist, global conscience, and apparently now unofficial ambassador of Canadian exceptionalism, praised our country. He said, the whole world is in awe of what you've done. Competence turns out to be the rarest thing on the planet. That was Bono not even being dramatic for once.
Canada's up here talking about new partnerships with Europe, green energy leadership, and affordable housing built with Canadian lumber by people who still believe in decency, inclusivity, and civility.
Hey, we're not perfect, but when King Charles and Bono are both nodding our direction in the same week, that's not random, that's earned. He also praised our mosaic, our ability to bring together diverse people, cultures, and ideas and actually make it work. We're not a melting pot. Canada's a masterpiece.
And remember, this is the same guy who said in 2016, the world needs more Canada. And let's be clear, this wasn't just Canada patting itself on the back. This was Canada showing the world that democracy doesn't have to be loud to be strong, that leadership can be competent, calm, and still completely badass.
Yeah, we're still talking to the US because we have to, but Carney made it clear the relationship has changed. We're not clinging to a broken system, we're building new ones with Europe, with global partners who don't threaten us with tariffs one day and then call us friends the next.
Carney wasn't shy. He said it flat out. Canada needs to stop relying on just one partner. We're building real ties with Europe and Asia because the world is changing, and we're not waiting.
And on defense, Canada is now officially joining Rearm Europe, a major defense plan with our European allies. That means boosting our own defense industry, protecting our sovereignty, and creating Canadian jobs by building here at home. It's a new security alliance that actually treats us like equals, not just a northern outpost.
Yeah, the US also brought up their Golden Dome missile system, but Carney's answer was pure Canada. We'll defend ourselves with partners, not ultimatums.
Bottom line, Republicans love to say Trump's playing 4D chess when really the guy can barely finish a game of Hungry Hungry Hippo. Meanwhile, Carney's 5-move ahead, protecting Canada's sovereignty, locking down global partnerships, and proving that actual leadership doesn't come with a catchphrase.
Carney's not outsourcing our future, he's building it, from our Arctic security to our economic foundations.
And he's doing it the smart way. He's not just tossing out random budget numbers to score points. Start with the result, what's necessary to secure Canada, then figure out what it costs, not the other way around.
That's why the fall budget isn't rushed. Because grown-ups know it's not just about headlines, it's about doing it right.
And by Canada Day, a tax cut, free interprovincial trade, a major Canada-EU defense and trade summit, and a government that's not winging it for applause, but planning for results.
Just as Canada was having its moment, with global praise, a visionary throne speech, and actual grown-up leadership, guess who couldn't help themselves?
Donald Trump, Danielle Smith, and Pierre Poilievre, the unholy trinity of tantrums.
Let's start with Trump. He claimed Canada very much wants to join America's missile defense system, but only if we become the cherished 51st state. And if we don't, well, he's billing us $61 billion like we're a cable subscriber who missed a payment. And then, Danielle Smith decided to chime in. Her response to a national unity speech? Hey, where's my pipeline?
She accused the Prime Minister of not bending fast enough to Alberta's demands because apparently the country's entire throne speech was supposed to be a love letter to oil.
She literally gave the Prime Minister weeks, not months, to give Alberta everything it wants, or else. Or else what? She's gonna call Florida again?
Danielle, we hate to break it to you, but it's not all about you. You don't get to hold the country hostage every time you don't get your way. This is a federation. You have neighbors, Indigenous nations, provinces, territories. You're supposed to work with them. When exactly did you become the Queen of Canada?
And then there's Poilievre. This guy lost his seat. He's not the leader of the official opposition anymore. He doesn't even sit in Parliament. So why are CBC and CTV still handing him a mic like he's the voice of Canada?
That seat he's running for in Alberta, of course. It's not a coronation, it's a by-election. And until he's actually elected, the only thing he should be running is errands.
Scheer is the interim leader, so let him talk. That's how democracy works. You don't get to skip the voters and still claim airtime.
Trump, Smith, Poilievre, they're all using the same tired playbook. Anger, blame, division, and they just can't stand it that Canada has flipped the script.
These tantrums prove exactly why this week mattered. Why King Charles's speech landed, why Carney's steady hand is resonating, and why Canadians' future can't be held hostage by ultimatums and oil lobby press releases.
This week wasn't just a ceremonial checkpoint, it was a reset, a reintroduction, and a national mic drop.
The King showed up, the world took notice, Carney delivered, and Canadians, we finally saw ourselves reflected in the way we want to be seen. Strong, smart, united, and proud.
And not proud in that performative, flag-draped, fear-based kind of way. Proud in the we've actually done the work kind of way.
We're not chasing chaos. We're choosing competence. We're not picking fights. We're building coalitions. And we're not asking permission. We're showing up as equals.
To the Canadians who watched the speech from the throne and felt some stir, leave a comment and tell us how it touched you.
This is our time to lead with values, to innovate with purpose, to stand for sovereignty, not just against threats, but for something better.
So if you've been waiting for a reason to believe in this country again, this is it, people.
King,
country,
Canada.